Hello everybody, and welcome back to a brand new video. In today's video, we'll be taking a look at the 2022 elections in Michigan for both the governor's race and a few competitive House seats. Why is this significant? Well, the Democrats have a really good slate of things in Michigan this year. They've been dealt what I think is the ideal hand, even though in other circumstances they haven't necessarily been having the best luck. But Michigan, I think, is a state where the Democrats will be doing very well in November, especially compared to what was originally expected and what we're going to see in other states across the country. So let's talk about this because I think there are four really important things to discuss about Michigan, and I think all four you can make the case for are tilting towards Democrats right now. So the first thing we'll be talking about is the 2022 Michigan gubernatorial election. This is between Democratic incumbent Gretchen Whitmer and her Republican challenger Tudor Dixon. So Whitmer was first elected in 2018. Again, this was a blue wave year, and the Republicans really didn't expect to beat her anyways, but she won by a convincing 9.5% margin over Bill Chouette, who actually was a statewide official. He was, again, the former Attorney General of Michigan. He won in 2014 as a Republican statewide, so he wasn't, he was no scrub. And yeah, the Michigan GOP were not popular then. They're not even that popular now. But Whitmer winning and outrunning Hillary Clinton by like 10 points in Michigan in 2018 is still very impressive. And as you can see here, she did very well everywhere. She got decent margins in the Upper Peninsula. She was able to flip the ancestrally Republican regions of the Grand Rapids metro area. She did very well in Kalamazoo. Did very well in the Lansing, Flint, and Saginaw Bay areas. But she did very well. She got very good turnout from Detroit and UMich. Again, this is Washtenaw County right here, home of the university. And she also did very well in the suburbs, and she was able to win back the working class county of Macomb. So she did well with working class voters, rural voters, suburban voters, urban voters, and even some, voters in the past that have been Republican. Like as you can see in the 2014 gubernatorial race, this county right here, Kent County, was very solid for the GOP. But in 2018, Whitmer was able to flip it. So, and again, Kent County is significant because it's the home of Grand Rapids. It's a very large county, a lot of votes there. So Whitmer had a very impressive performance in 2018, and this year I think she's on track to do very well once again. So let's talk about the polling here. And again, the polls in Michigan have not been perfect. If you look at the 2020 presidential polls in Michigan right here, go 2020, Biden was up on election day by nearly 8%, and he only won by about 3%. So there was about a 5% miss towards towards the Democrats in 2020. And I think it's actually important to factor that in to this gubernatorial race because, again, Whitmer's up by 12.2% right now, and I don't think she'll win by anything close to that. That would actually be more than she won by in 2018, which I think is her realistic ceiling. And if you apply that 5-point shift towards the Republicans, you'd get a Whitmer plus 7 margin. I think Whitmer plus 7 is fairly reasonable. I could totally see her winning by 7. I think it'll be a little closer. I think it'll be about a 5-point victory for Gretchen Whitmer. But again, it's just really embarrassing for Tudor Dixon that she hasn't been able to find a lead from any of these polls. Even Trafalgar, which, as we know, is a very Republican-leaning pollster, they had Trump winning Michigan in 2020, despite the fact that it was pretty clear by election that he was not going to be able to win Michigan. So, the fact that Whitmer's down 4 or is up 4 in this Trafalgar poll, and she's up double digits in basically every other poll except for Fabrizio. And again, Fabrizio is this is Donald Trump's pollster. So again, the only polls that have had this race even close have been 2 Republican polls. But the more nonpartisan polls, Whitmer up by 16, by 11, by 13, by 11, by I don't really like blueprints, so I guess I'll ostracize them. But 15, 14, 12, 10, 8. Then Target Insight, which I don't love, had her up by 30. But yeah, so the reason that this race got so bad for the GOP so quick, because if you guys remember back last year, I had the Republicans actually narrowly flipping Michigan. I had it as a tilt R race for a few months, but the reason the field got so bad for the GOP was that their candidate that they were going to run, who was actually very strong, was James Craig, who was the former police chief of Detroit. And what happened was Craig, he did not get enough signatures to be on the ballot. He kind of got too cute, got a little too cocky, and was not able to qualify for the ballot on the primary. And we were kind of left with this slate of very bad GOP candidates. We had one guy who was at the Capitol on January 6th. We had one guy who I think was accused of harassing his workers because he was a businessman. And then we had Tudor Dixon, who again didn't have scandals necessarily the way these other candidates did, but she's made some very controversial statements about abortion. And she just doesn't really have a ton of money or appeal the way Gretchen Whitmer does. Because again, Whitmer's going to outspend her by 20-1 margins come November. And so that is very, very bad for Tudor Dixon because that allows Whitmer to brand her however she really wants to, and it it's going to really cost Dixon if she can't really define herself to voters the way Whitmer has been able to. So, the predictions for this race are kind of all over the place. The most recent ones from August 22nd and August 18th have it as lean likely D. RCP has just toss up, but they have like everything as a toss up, and this is back in June. Politico and Sabato and Cook from the summer had it as lean D. Inside Election says it's tilty, but this is back in March when I don't let like James Craig was probably going to be the GOP nominee. And I'd actually argue that, like, toss-up would be the correct rating if he was the GOP nominee. But either way, I think it's likely D. Lean D is a fair rating as well, but I'm just pretty bullish on Whitmer at this point, especially you consider that Whitmer literally has so much money. She's a very popular incumbent. She has 55% approval rating, and Dixon's just not a good challenger. Like, if the Republicans had a good challenger, they'd have a chance of beating Whitmer, but they don't. And like I think even the people who are like very, very bullish on Republicans this year don't expect Whitmer to lose. So I think Whitmer is going to win re-election by about 5%, and that's actually a conservative estimate. I've seen people who think she wins by like up to 10%, but I'm just going to be a little more conservative here. So that's the governor's race. Let's talk about the House races now, because we have a lot. Like, Michigan is just going to be a treasure trove of fascinating House races to watch on election night. So let's start. We'll do this in order. Let's start with the 3rd district right here. Again, this is a seat. We're going to zoom in here. This is a seat that, if I can, let's see, how do I want to do this? There we go. Yeah. So this is a seat that takes in the city of Grand Rapids right here and snakes it up to Muskegon, which is a more Democratic leaning area. And it's very left trending. Again, this is a seat that Biden won by 8.5, but only went to Hillary Clinton by about 2. So that's a 6.5 point swing towards the Democrats in just 4 years. And this seat is so left trending that even, Gretchen Whitmer won it in 2018. If we take a look at her, Senator, if we look at the 2018 margin in Michigan 3, Whitmer won it by about 7.8, I want to say. And wait, no, I'm sorry, 7.2, not 7.8. And that's about a point worse than Biden, despite the fact that she did like nearly 7% better statewide than Biden. So, the fact that Michigan 3 swung left from 2018 to 2020 just shows how left trending it is. This is a seat where the Republicans are running a really bad candidate, John Gibbs. John Gibbs has said he believes Democrats eat babies, and that he actually ran a think tank. We now know this for a fact in the 2000s that argued for women not being able to vote and not being able to be in the workplace with men, which is a very antiquated and misogynistic idea. And so that does not bode well in a seat that's Democratic leaning. It doesn't bode well in a seat where the Democratic Party has made a lot of gains recently. And this is a very moderate seat. Again, had the GOP ran Peter Meijer, who was the incumbent Republican, they could have maybe ended up, holding on to it for another 2 years. But, they're running John Gibbs now, who is a very extreme candidate, but not really well liked. And he only was able to win his Republican primary by 4 points. He wasn't even a world beater in the GOP primary. So I do expect John Gibbs to lose to Hillary Schulten, the Democrat. And she was the Democratic candidate in 2020. And in fairness, she did run behind Biden by about 2%. So I don't think that she's that great of a candidate, but she's replacement level. I think she's good enough to win by a fair amount, especially in a seat as left trending as this. So that's a Democratic pickup right here. And they're going to go to Michigan 7. So Michigan 7, I was very bullish on the Republicans here because, the seat only voted for Biden by like 1%. And I really thought that the Republicans would need to have like a really bad candidate to end up losing the seat. But what we've seen is that they actually have just that. Tom Barrett is their candidate. He's a state legislator from the region, and he has made some controversial statements about abortion, and he just doesn't have enough money to unseat Slotkin, the Democratic incumbent here, who has literally, I think, $13 million cash on hand compared to him having like $500,000. And she won a Trump seat in 2020. She won like I think a Trump +2 seat by I want to say 4% in 2020. So she outran Biden by a lot, despite the fact that the Republicans really wanted to beat her back then to kind of get her out of the political scene in Michigan. And her seat's now a bit bluer. And in fairness, it'll be in a more Republican national environment, but her seat's bluer. She's a very well liked incumbent. And if you look at the polls, again, not that I love the polls, but she's up by 18 points in this poll, which again, not great, but she's up by 18 there. And if we take a look, I'm just going to see if we have any more polls in District 7. She's up by 18 here. The GOP internal could only find a 2-point Barrett lead, and she's up by 6 in this other poll. So if you average all these polls out, even even if you take out that, or sorry, even if you don't take out the Republican poll, which obviously has motives, uh, Salk is still up by 7 points. She's still crushing um, Tom Barrett, and I don't think she'll win by 7, but I think she's going to end up winning by a few points because this is a left-trending seat. It's a seat that Trump won in 2020, but lost in 2016, but lost in 2020, and I just Salkin's really good incumbent. She has a lot of money, and I think she's going to be fine here. So Michigan 7, call that a very important Democratic hold. Now Michigan 8, this is another important seat. This is a Biden plus 2 district that's very working class. As you can see, it takes in a bunch of cities here. It has the city of Flint down here, then the city right up here, Saginaw, and then you also have like the Bay Area of Michigan. And it's a right trending seat. I think in 2024, there's a real chance the Democrats lose it, but this year I think they're going to be fine. Dan Kelly's a very well-liked incumbent. He outran Biden by a lot in 2020. He won by 13 in a very marginal seat. And yeah, the Republicans didn't really have a good candidate back then, but they don't this time either. They're running Paul Jungay, the guy who lost to Slotkin in 2020 in a Trump seat. So he ran behind Trump by like a lot in 2020. He's probably going to do the same in 2022. And honestly, this is one of the few seats nationwide where I think the Democratic candidate's going to do better than Joe Biden. Again, this is a Biden plus 2 seat, but down ballot it's a lot more Democratic. If you look at the 2020 Senate race on the same ballot, seats like Michigan 3 and Michigan 7 get a little more Republican, but Michigan 8 goes from Biden plus 2 to Peters plus 4. So again, I don't really like to talk about down ballot stuff because I think it gives you a very skewed idea of what's happening. But what I will say is that Kilde's a well-entrenched incumbent. He's ahead in the little polling we have here, and Paul Jungay is just not a good candidate, and I don't really see him winning as of right now. So, and again, this is a more Republican-leaning pollster. Kilde's still up, so I expect the Democratic Party to hold on to Michigan 8. That's another critical hold for them. Again, they'd be flipping Michigan 3, but holding on to Michigan 7 and 8. Then lastly, Michigan 10. This is a Republican-held seat. But it's an open seat. So the Republicans are running John James. In case the name is familiar to you, you're right, because he was the 2018 and 2020 nominee for Senate in Michigan for the Republican Party. He lost in 2018 by about 6%. He lost in 2020 by about 2%. But it's still not good when you lose statewide twice, even though his performances weren't, horrific. So this seat's really interesting. I don't think the Democrats are I think that there is a good chance the seat is like a bit of a sleeper. I think the Democrats have like a real chance of winning it, but I'm not going to predict it as of right now. What I will say is that it's easy to make the case for a Democratic victory. They're running Carl Marlinga, who is a countywide official in Macomb. Again, Macomb County right here was a Trump plus 8 county, and Michigan 10 takes in a lot of Macomb County. And Carl Marlinga is this countywide official. He's decently popular in Macomb County, so he's a good candidate for the Democrats. And yes, in 2020, the seat did vote for Trump by about half a point, so it was very close, but it still was Trump leaning. But if you look at the Senate race, interestingly enough, this is the race that John James ran in against Gary Peters. James actually lost the seat he's running in. He lost Michigan 10 by about 0.7%. So he didn't do well there in 2020. And in 2018, he did even worse. He lost Michigan 10, as you can see right here, by about 7. So the fact that John James is running in a seat that he lost twice is not really that great of a look for him. Again, I think he's favored. This is still a Trump-leaning seat, and I think that in a more Republican-leaning environment, James is going to win it. But this is a sleeper flip, especially if you consider all the polls we've had here. If you look at the House polls out of Michigan 10, they're showing interesting races. John James is up by 4.5 in the polling aggregate right now, but that's only because we got a more Republican-leaning pollster showing him up. And yeah, the polls that have Marlinga up are Democratic pollsters. These are his internals, have him up by 2 and 4. But, there's also James Internal has him up 6. And then, the more nonpartisan polls that they did a bunch of these polls before the primary, but the only one we really have back from January, that deadline, Detroit, had Marlinga beating James by 3. So again, this is a seat where I think the polls could end up underestimating Republican support by a lot. But the fact that this seat is in play for Democrats, the fact that they're running a good candidate, and the fact that John James lost it in 2020 makes it kind of a seat with a lot of variance. Yes, I think the Republicans are favored to win it right now, but Whitmer's probably going to win at the top of the ticket, and James isn't actually as good of a candidate as I think people give him credit for. So there's one more thing I want to talk about that has statewide implications before we get into the last thing, and that's the abortion referendum. So in case you don't know, Michigan's having an abortion referendum. It's going to be at the top of the ballot, or not the top, but it's going to be a very important issue. And this is it's basically guaranteed to pass. Again, the fact that an abortion referendum passed the fact that Kansas voted against basically banning abortion by 18 points back in August is pretty incredible. And Kansas is a state that is like 20 points more Republican than Michigan. So I think Michigan's going to like overwhelmingly pass this, abortion protection amendment to the Constitution, the state constitution. And I also think that this is going to be big for Democrats because it'll be a turnout booster. Again, there might have been, some voters who weren't going to really turn out for the midterms because they didn't really care about the Democratic Party or anything like that, but will be more energized to vote now that there's an abortion referendum on the ballot. So that'll boost Democrats in pro-choice seats like District 11 and District 3, as well as the city of Detroit and whatnot. But it'll also help them with a lot of working class voters. Now, again, working class voters are socially conservative in some cases, but that mostly comes from like, I think it's religiosity is the term, and the fact that the that Michigan working class voters that actually backed Trump in 2020 aren't super religious really bodes well for the abortion referendum. I think that the abortion referendum is going to do very well in the 8th district, the 7th district. It's also very likely to pass the 10th district, and I think the 4th district it's going to pass as well. Like the only seats the abortion referendum won't pass is probably the 2nd, the 9th, and the 5th. With the 1st district being a pure toss-up, I think, really in terms of whether the abortion referendum will pass it. I lean no, but it's going to be very close, and so that's a turnout booster for Democrats, and it'll help them in the suburbs too. So again, Democrats have a lot going for them this year down the ballot. But let's talk about one last thing here before we recap. So Michigan has basically all of their state legislative seats up this year. If you take a look at the C analysis, again, you can go to this website, it's projects.canalysis.com/22/state legislature Michigan, and you can look at any state legislature you want, literally anyone. Like they have forecasts. It's a really cool site. I don't know a ton about state legislature seats individually, but I can tell you about them as a whole. But yeah, so let's start with the state house, which is rated as leaning Republican as a whole. Democrats have they give the Democrats a 27% chance of a majority, a 4% chance of tying it, and then they give the Republicans a 69% chance of holding some sort of majority. And so they currently have the Republicans getting a very narrow majority here. But again, like if you look at the toss-up seats, these are all Biden-leaning districts. This is a seat that voted for Biden. This is a seat that voted for, I think, Trump narrowly. Or no, it's Biden plus 9. Yes, this seat voted for Biden by 5. This seat voted for Biden by 9. This seat voted for, do they not show it? That's weird. They should show it. Huh. Okay, they don't. That's weird, but I would assume they'd show it. But anyways, the toss-up seats are more Biden leading. There are a few seats in suburban Detroit. Like if we zoom in here, whoops. Well, that's weird. There are a few seats in like the Detroit suburbs out here that are rated as leaning or likely Republican that I think the Democrats have like a better than expected shot at winning, because these are again suburban very pro-choice seats that are probably going to be backlashing toward having a GOP backlash in the aftermath of the Dobbs ruling. So the state house, I think, is a toss-up, but it's very narrowly leaning Republican. I think the Democrats are going to do a little better than C analysis has them doing, but again, they have, I'd say, a 35% chance of winning it. So not necessarily like the best chance, but they could clearly do better here. Because, like, again, in the past, the map's been so gerrymandered, the Democrats have had no chance to win. Now we have kind of fairish maps that are going to help them be more competitive. So let's talk about the state Senate, and it's a pure toss-up right here. And it's pretty simple. Again, you have basically a bunch of safe D seats, a few lean D seats in the Detroit suburbs and, outside of the University of Michigan. 2 toss-up seats right here. This first one is a working class seat that Dan Kildee is going to help the Democrats do. I think Kildee's going to do very well here, and he's going to help down ballot Democrats. And then the second one, the 11th district, is a seat in Macomb County. It's another working class seat that, if Carl Marlingo does well and Gretchen Whitmer does well here, could easily go Democratic as well. Then you have the Democrats need to pick up one of these lean Republican seats to win over the chamber, assuming they win their toss-ups and their lean D seats. And this first seat over here, I think, is underrated for them. This is a seat that actually voted for Biden very narrowly in 2020. It's north of Grand Rapids, and it's a very, very left-running seat. So I think Democrats can do well here. In the 9th district, I'm not as bullish. Again, it's suburban enough that Democrats have a chance, but I think that's going to narrowly go Republican. So I currently have the Democrats very narrowly favored to take the Michigan State Senate. I have them winning all these seats, and then for the majority winning this 30th district. But again, they have a real chance of winning the 9th. They have a decent chance of winning the 12th if things go really well for Whitmer statewide. But, again, the Republicans have a clear path, too. They can win the 11th or the 35th and hold on to their lean R seats, and they will be fine. So, again, I think Michigan will have a Democratic governor, a Democratic state Senate, but a Republican state House, again, which will be the best thing for Democrats in Michigan in a while, again, because even in 2018, which was a blue wave, Democrats couldn't take control of either chamber in Michigan because of gerrymandering. So that's kind of where I am right now. So, again, that was a lot, kind of just 20 minutes of me doing a lot of Michigan talk, but I think it's important because if you told me 6 months ago Democrats would be probably winning the governor's race, doing very well in 3 out of the 4 House seats, maybe even 4 out of 4, having an abortion referendum at the top of the ballot to help boost turnout and pass abortion rights in Michigan, and be competitive in the state legislature, I would have been like, well, that's basically the best case scenario for them. And yet here we are. So again, it might not be like a perfect blue sweep, but it'll be pretty dang good because I think Democrats are going to win the governor's race. I think they're going to win the 3rd, the 7th, and 8th district. I think that they have, a 40% chance of winning that 10th district. So it's very much in play. I think they're going to pass the abortion referendum overwhelmingly, and I think they're going to do very well in the state legislature as well. So Michigan, I think, is going to be a blue wave this year, not necessarily because the environment's going to be a blue wave, but because Democrats have had a really good set of cards dealt to them. So that's it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'll see you all in the next one. Bye, guys.